Good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board of Work session. It is Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. It is 3:32 p.m. The session is set to go till 4 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110 for public virtual attendance. You may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menzer. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. Also in the boardroom, we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, as well as Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell and Assistant County Manager Rob Elder. And we have staff here to present the A-19 wireless code update. This is a follow-up to a follow-up to a follow-up, so go ahead.
County Manager, Assistant County Manager?
Take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. I think that's a great way of describing it. The staff continues to hear input from the commissioners on how we can help work through these decision-making process, recognizing that as the board has been relayed by your legal counsel, both internal and external on multiple occasions, that the sideboards are relatively limited within the different options that the Board of County Commissioners has. And staff continues to try and provide information and visuals. The last we heard from the Board of County Commissioners was a conversation on setbacks and a few other items, radio frequencies and other. And Andrew Bond, our newest staff member on this topic, not our newest staff member, but our newest staff member to take wireless code on, I think has done a pretty good job of taking the baton. And so I will turn it to Andrew and then Ashley as our new community planning manager to go over some of the topics, but recognizing that we understand that this is a difficult community dialogue and that our goal as staff is to continue, as the board has requested, to drive items toward a decision-making point. And so if there's more or different ways that we can provide that information, we're open to receive. Our best shot at what we heard is gonna be presented today. If there's more we can do, we're more than happy to do that. So, anything else I should say?
I think you nailed it.
Okay.
So my thought process behind how we attack this beast is kind of just going one item at a time. And so starting with radio frequency emissions, at the previous meeting, it was the direction from the board that we kind of produce some language that could be incorporated into the proposed ordinance that would allow the county the ability to facilitate and or conduct inspections of wireless communications facilities at the expense of the county and all of the necessary ins and outs of accessing the site and so on.
So take your page here and then flip it over. And we'll talk about the radio frequencies, option 1 and 2 is what Andrew's gonna be referencing.
So with that, we produced two options. The first option was kind of based on what the consultant had provided originally and some just general language that allowed the county to to go onto the site to do these inspections, and that the property owner must provide us access. Option 2 kind of incorporated some of the language that was discussed at last meeting, where at the discretion of the board, the county may conduct periodic or random testing of wireless communication facilities. And again, the property owner must provide us access to allow us to do that. And the same kind of general concept that we had at the previous meeting was that once an issue has been identified by staff, we would then forward it to the FCC for that regulatory enforcement. So kind of opening it up now to the board for questions or thoughts on how we kind of approach these two options.
So just to clarify, option 1, it's kind of ambiguous as to who initiates the testing. Option 2, it's clear that the Board of County Commissioners initiates the testing.
And other than that, it's the same, right?
I think
Pretty much.
Yeah, just designating the commissioners, gotta say, 2 commissioners or 3 commissioners in the future have to say, hey, go test that,
Exactly.
right?
And both of them are at the county's expense.
Yeah.
The testing. And then I think to Andrew's point, if there is a perspective that the testing results in something outside the bounds of what is allowable, then we take that to the FCC. Federal Communications Commission.
I'm good with option 2. Are we looking for a decision or no?
If you are at the place where the board can make decisions, we're open to
I'm
receive.
good, but I'd like to hear my seatmates.
I think option 1 gives you more flexibility. As
What's
opposed
that?
Option 1 gives you more
Yes,
flexibility.
yes, it does, but
Because then.
Option 3 or option 2, the people have to come and petition their commissioners to get it done.
Well, then you get into the legislative process for you to direct. So
Okay,
suggestion, I think option 1 gives you more flexibility
okay,
to achieve the objective.
I was just getting on with it. Let's get it going.
No, this is just my suggestion.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So
It's good.
Usually after that.
It's a good suggestion.
Commissioner Munzer.
I like 1/2, but
You like option 2?
No, I don't care which one. I just want to get it, either one of them. Let's do it. Let's get her done.
So basically, the second one is just, it would have to be initiated by the vote of like, a legislative direction.
The first one, the public director could,
And then the first one, it's if there's calls,
Mhm.
that way staff can take the step and kind of go test, basically.
Yeah,
we gotta approve the budget to do it anyway.
yeah, right, I think that to the county manager's point, there's more flexibility in one.
Okay,
How that all plays out, we've obviously never done it before, but we
we'll
would,
never know, but I think having this language achieves the objective, gives a little more flexibility without having the board to exercise every time goal test.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you,
So are we there, all three of us on one?
option one.
Option 1,
3 thumbs up,
Me, yep.
okay.
excellent. Moving on to
is that a
set,
decision of the wireless?
we're moving fast. We're gonna meet that 30-minute deadline. Option 2 is the next topic is setbacks, and I kind of, obviously I brought a graphic to kind of articulate. I was not at the executive session, so I don't have that knowledge of how the conversation went, but based on what I've been able to gather from Josh and many others.
can we get this on screen for the public viewing? No? Okay, can this be posted online?
We'll
for
make
the
it
public?
available as part of the briefing packet online.
Good. Yeah, we were trying to get it as crystal clear as possible right up into the last minute.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
So what I did is provide an example that should be rather familiar. These two sites are similar to the POG because the lower half is the NC properties and the upper half is the RRR 1 to 5. What I wanted to showcase is kind of what the setbacks are currently based on the zoning district.
Just one sec, what is an NC property?
It is the neighborhood commercial, and then RRR 1 to 5 is rural residential resource, 1 dwelling unit
That's
per 5
exactly the
acres.
same properties you were talking
I
about.
I thought that would be helpful.
stand, right?
It's the same properties that you were discussing in the previous briefing. That will give you a close-up of
Yeah,
of
there
the
you go.
uses.
So how the current wireless language is written is that it requires that the wireless facility meet the setbacks of that specific zoning district and or based on the height of the structure. So if it's a tall tower, the higher number applies. And so if the tower is 50 feet, the setback may only be 5 feet, but the tower itself would have to be moved back 50 feet. And then there are a few other mitigating factors that allow reduction based on screening and so on. But overall, I kind of wanted just to provide a visual of what to expect. And so for any property, there is a setback requirement. And the setbacks are pretty much laid out based on the use. So commercial is a standard 20 feet on an arterial highway for a front yard setback, 10 feet on a collector, and 5 on the side and rear. Residential, it's gonna be 25, and then 5 on the side and 5 on the rear. So that's gonna be the standard throughout the county for all setbacks related to wireless facilities. And then any facility that is exceeding in the height would then be subject to the additional feet of the structure.
we're talking about setback from what?
The property line,
The property line?
yes.
So if you look at this,
The county's right away in property line.
so look at the chart and you've got the white line is the property line and then the green line is the 5-foot setback from that property line. Along the street is the setback, if it's a rural, it's 25 feet. If it's a neighborhood commercial, it's 20 feet from the road. And so
the
those are the setbacks.
For the RR 1 to 5.
On the front of the parcel has a different setback than the sides or the back.
Can I follow up on the commissioner's question there? So, if you have a setback of whatever it is, 5, 20, 25, so then it has to be outside of the county's right-of-way by 5, 20, or 25. Are we forcing the utility to buy space from a private individual, thus driving up the cost.
There are measures within the code that allow for the small cell to be located on utility poles within the right of
But
way.
what about like, for whatever reason, 20 and 25? If we require that, are we requiring them to spend a lot of money that maybe they wouldn't have to spend if we did something else?
To put up a tower, or we,
Well, I don't know, a pole, I don't know what that would be. I'm
So-
just asking that question.
With the setbacks, that's still all the property, it's owned by that property owner. So it is just a standard zoning distance from the property line. And so it's still owned by the property, they would still have to coordinate with that property owner on a
So they
lease
might
or
have to purchase easement.
So, and I think it's the reverse, what Commissioner Edwards is thinking, perhaps. It
I've been
is,
backwards
it is.
many
yeah.
times.
It is not a setback from the right of way, from the road. It is, I believe the tower can be located within the county's right of way, but it has to be maintained certain setbacks to those properties. That, I think is the reverse. So it's not like we're gonna have, if I may verbalize your comment, is 25 feet from the county's right of way, and that tower has to be in private property.
so I think that take us back a little bit to, I think it's the
It's-
tier 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
So
I
you've
think
got
it's
the
I think it's the setbacks is reversed.
towers not on
Oh,
right of way.
whatever cells.
So there's 3 different kinds of things that way back, there's the little rectangle, and that can go on power poles in the right of way. There's the existing towers and you're putting little rectangles on that. What we're talking, and then there's the third, which is where you construct your own tower. That constructing your own tower cannot go on the right of way, it has to be on private property, so.
Right.
So the little ones, to your point, the little ones, yes, can go on a pole. The big ones, no, they will have to go on private property, and yes, they may have to purchase that property.
Okay, just asking.
I think the other illustration too, not to steal anything from you, but the idea of the setbacks, and especially when it comes to an illustration of the height of the proposed structure. Say if the parcel was only 100 feet wide and the tower was to be 50, it couldn't be sited there because it would have to be, so say it's 75, right? So that it's a little bit more than 50. So it wouldn't be able to
All across the line.
achieve the setback either way.
Squeezed out.
So in those parcel situations, there will be parcels where just based on the tower's height, it just will not be practical to be located in those spots. So kind of building off what he says, the setbacks are very consistent across the county in terms of where structures can be replaced. And then it kind of falls to that specific project of really what additional standards come into play based on what they're putting through.
And this is a tough one, it's not nearly as clear and dry as the cut and dry as the previous one with option 1 and 2. This one was to kind of get at the inquiry, I think that Commissioner Mejia had in terms of how close can this be to somebody else's house and a bedroom nearby? And so this is what we currently have, because we have to use the setbacks that are listed within our code. So this is that visual that you're looking at, that you're asking for.
That's where I'm getting confused, that a setback, you keep saying it's a property line, I don't care about the property line, I care about where the people are sleeping and working in their house, so the bedroom, as you say. So like the property line is like, that's where I want it to be, by the property line, not near my house or my school or my office. So I'm getting confused by this, like, why do I care about a property, why do I care about a setback from a property line? So, I mean, in terms of meeting all the community stakeholder concerns about, you know, visuals and all those things that we're balancing.
So this goes back to what your lawyer provided you in terms of your sideboards and changing those setbacks. We're giving you the baseline. This is what the setbacks are. If you look at the north property, you can see that if you put the little rectangular piece somewhere back there, it might be close to the housing structure in the property just south of it. So this is just a visual to engage the conversation, but you as the commissioners still need to recognize that your legal counsel has provided you a pretty clear sideboards in terms of your flexibility on this topic.
Maybe another way of looking at it too is that other than the small units that can go into the right of way, anything within a parcel is going to have some amount of height. And as that height of that structure is what's going to determine how far from the parcel line
Yeah.
it will be.
Good.
So if it's surrounded by trees, you're going to have a certain height. If it's 20 feet, it's going to be 20 feet away from the parcel line. So 20 feet away from that home or that school or that business. That will really be the determining factor, is the height of the infrastructure.
I don't think that the board has the option to say it's gonna be X number of setback from any neighbor's existing structure. I think that you've got to base it on the parcel. I don't think that that's an option.
But it is helpful, that's correct, and it is helpful, that could have been a piece of the visual that we added, was a 30-foot tower needs to be 30 feet away from that property line. The height of the tower is another piece of the mitigating factors into the setback. We didn't add that part, but maybe that's a piece of the puzzle.
I've never had a topic as a commissioner that's made me feel dumber than this topic. I honestly, I don't understand how these setbacks work. And so it's hard for me to like try to guide policy when I don't even understand the current policy. And it's not your
So
fault.
can we go ahead and skip setbacks and maybe,
Yeah.
because,
I'm
Circle
lost in
back.
setbacks.
Okay,
I just don't
so-
get it.
so then let's go to the public notice, which is the next part, and then,
I'm just gonna abstain on any vote related to setbacks. I don't understand it until I understand it.
So,
Public notice.
public notice, and at the previous meeting, it was directed to staff to kind of look at what it would take to do a website, a mailing, and an on-site notice for any proposed application and or a notice of application. And so what we did is we went through each of the concepts and kind of did kind of scenarios, a level of effort, some potential opportunities of each of those, as well as potential conflicts. And so starting with the website, the current permitting system is limited in its capabilities. And obviously, as you're aware, we are replacing it with Acela, and Acela will have a great interface with Geographic Information System, or GIS, which will make establishing a website with live permit data transfer completely doable. So some of the opportunities with that is that it will provide that noticing, up-to-date noticing for anyone in the community to go to that webpage and see, okay, there is an active permit for a wireless communication facility, or there is an approved one. Obviously, some of the potential conflicts with that is the current system is not compatible. So it's gonna, once we have the system, we can do it much easier, but right now we're manually doing everything. And then there'll be a little upfront work just to establish it, but otherwise we'll be squared away. That was website. For mailing, it is kind of a standard practice that we do within our office, either for a public noticing, for a public hearing, or just a notice of application. It will require our administrative staff to do the research for adjacent property owners, as well as produce the notice and prepare the notices to be mailed, as well as all the costs associated with that. It will notify the owners, and it will cost us the printing and postage, which obviously could be associated with the application cost. The only other potential conflict with the mailed notice is that we generally, with mailed notices, have a public comment period. And so there could be that perception that there's a public comment period when in fact we are just telling them there is an application and that is it. So there's that kind of that balancing act with that. And then finally, for on-site noticing, we kind of took it from two different approaches. We did our standard practice that you saw the noticing change that we brought forward a couple months ago, where we developed the notice board and provided to the applicants, and they posted on site for X amount of time until we deem that it's been noticed and return the sign back to us. It will obviously require county staff to produce those materials and coordinate with the public or the applicant to post on site, but it is a completely doable process. On the flip side, a new approach that we don't necessarily have, but I think is kind of a creative way to reduce staff time, is to develop just a standardized digital template that we provide to the applicant, and then they be responsible for any printing that is associated with that and all the specifications that we lay out. And there would be less staff time and so on, and as well as would potentially not be as consistent as our standard noticing boards due to falling to the applicants to do all the work themselves, but a few varying options, I think, for the board to consider with those, and so I open it up for questions.
So just to refresh the commissioner's memory, this was the conversation on making sure people around the different locations had notification, and the conversation we had was about expectations. So once they get this notification, what can they do about it? And the answer is not very much. And so what level of expectation are we setting for the neighbors of these sites that are going to versus the amount of staff resources that are going into this notification? And so you have kind of a menu of options, and I think that Andrew did a pretty good job of laying out level of effort.
Questions?
So it's there if they wanna look for it,
On the website.
basically.
If it was on the website, that would be
It'll
the case.
all be there for those that wanna look.
That's correct.
Cause we can't do a damn thing about it anyway. Is that right? I mean, is that the bottom line?
Well, that's the thing, that the conversation that
Yeah.
Josh was alluded to
Right.
is
Otherwise,
also
we,
that the extent of notification to the purpose with the property, the individuals or the residents will not have an option. As you don't have an option to say no to an application.
yeah,
So it really begs the question, what is the level of effort the board wants to put in
expand,
in
yeah.
notifying a particular application?
Yeah.
My suggestion at some point will be, a small effort, having a website presence, I think gives that option to whoever wants to,
Listed on the website, good.
so. But notifications on the field and having the applicant to go through this notification process, I think is a lot of burdensome to the applicant.
Is there a way, do we have to codify the notification, or is there a way to codify notification per policy so that you could try one way and see how effective it is and then potentially shift gears to try something different down the road?
Per department policy, recognizing that we could start with website and see how it works.
Per policy directed by the commissioners or
Sure.
something like that.
Yeah, just, but offering, so if you don't codify it, then a specific path, then it's easier to change course if there's something better to.
Makes sense.
It's a good option.
Commissioner Mansur.
Other questions? Got 3 thumbs up, sounds like.
Website,
Thumbs up for what?
notification.
Doing some notification,
But just on the website.
I don't see how, I understand the approach, but I think if you go that direction, like you start with the website, how are you gonna know if it's adequate? You sort of have to start with the mailing and go backwards if you think you're getting no responses, I don't see how going that direction gets you any feedback.
But that goes back to the question, what type of feedback really are we gonna set the expectations to those residents? Because whatever feedback they may be opposed to this application,
We can't do
and the
anything.
board cannot rescind that application.
I also might suggest that the website provides a full accounting so everybody can see it, whereas the mailing is more targeted and just the folks that are locally impacted are the ones receiving the information.
So really, the conversation is, what is the purpose and intent of notification?
Yeah.
I think I understand the purpose, but the intent may not be.
I know that there were types of, this gets further down in the weeds. There were types where we were hands tied, can't do anything. There were other types where we did have ability. It's just that we were subject to the 90-day shot clock or whatever. So you had to come up with a process for public input that would allow you to still meet the 90-day timeline. But it wasn't that we were precluded from taking input or having to some discretion.
To kind of circle back, this would specifically be for administrative permits only. So the other permits that go through the hearing examiner will have their own set noticing, they will have their own public comment period as required by the special use chapter. So this is just going to be one of the administrative policies specific for like the small cell
This is those little rectangles again.
and not the towers, because the towers would trigger a greater review and a longer timeline.
So those ones are still covered. The big ones are still covered by the longer public process. This is trying to capture a wide net that we haven't done before. The little rectangles mostly. We heard one for website?
I'm good for the proposal, yeah.
Oh, are you ready or do you wanna?
Well, I don't know where you at.
So I think the website is good, right, once we have Excella, but when are we gonna get Excella?
Well, that's what
That's the,
Next
You
year,
know.
second quarter.
right, and so I see what Commissioner Mensah is saying, right, do we wanna start with like maybe the mailing and then after that transition into the website? Since,
I mean, you could do a few and then you could see, like, then Josh could come back and say, it took this much time. It's this many like, it's more effort than we thought or less effort than we thought.
just for me, like, it's like, you know, and I understand what county manager is trying to say, right, in terms of like, well, what kind of feedback is, you know, are you trying to get? And I don't think it's necessarily feedback, but just a notification. And if a citizen decides to go their own way and pursue something their own way, whether they have that recourse or not, that's at the end, the citizen's resident's choice, right, and the matter. And I feel like once we have Excella by next, second quarter next year, right, then we can maybe like, you know, just with that, if you could transition into more of a online notification system, because it will be more up to date and it will reduce staff time.
User-friendly.
And more user friendly and accessible, or
So what I'm hearing Commissioner Mensah and Commissioner Mejia leaning towards the on-site notification in the county be responsible for that.
well, yeah, because for right now, what I'm hearing with Amanda, right, it's gonna require GIS staff to get involved, it's gonna require, you know, just this whole process. And I don't know, like, maybe, for me, right, to just do it with Amanda right now and to send out the postings, like, seems like they're pretty level on workload, so
One approach that we could take is develop a kind of a simplistic language, kind of following what the assistant county manager said related to just, we'll follow the department noticing practice. And then what we could do is kind of draft up a kind of like an internal policy for us of how we approach this. So for right now, we will do the mailed noticing until such time that we have the online noticing, so that we don't have to necessarily codify it in code and then have to come back and remove that language from the code, kind of leaving it in our court and then obviously working with the board to make sure that the language aligns with the goals of the board for noticing.
So and that is a good point. So what I'm hearing, all three commissioners are interested in some sort of notification. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, I think that's
I'm not a big fan of the on-site notification proposals, but there's a way to.
So following Rob's suggestion, you know, I believe the board, all three of you are interested in some sort of notification.
minimal.
And the notification requirements will be generic on the code and then we'll develop a policy.
Be affirmed by the.
I'm good.
And then we'll come back with you with setbacks.
I'm good, yeah.
it is 4:01, thank you, we are adjourned, we've made some headway.
2 out of 3.